So I was thinking about growth strategies because every one of my firms that I've been at have not been kind of flat 1 or 2% type growth environments. Besides Dwayne Reed, DoubleClick, massive growth. Same thing at 100 Flowers, at Everyday Health, Seeking Alpha, Investopedia. And I was thinking about kind of three themes that I would share around growth strategies. And then I'll go into specific examples of what our growth strategies were at 1-800-Flowers, at Everyday Health, at Seeking Alpha, and at Investopedia. And I think that could hopefully be helpful for you as you think about entrepreneurship and what the growth strategies are. Okay, theme number one in terms of growth. All growth is not created equal. All revenue is not created equal. It's very important to understand, and let me explain why. The path for a company is to either get acquired, to go public, etc. Companies have valuations. Public companies, private companies have valuations. Valuations are based on a multiple to whatever the revenue, that number happens to be. That multiple can vary dramatically depending on what type of revenue it is. So there's types of revenue, this gets to my all growth is not created equal. There's types of revenue that $1 could be worth 3 times the amount of $1 in another area. And you understand why? Because of the multiple that can apply. It could be a 20-time multiple or 4-time multiple, depending on what type of revenue it is. So for example, if revenue is, in my world, revenue is oftentimes either subscription revenue, you subscribe to a site, like you subscribe to the New York Times or Wall Street Journal or Tinder, or advertising revenue. When something is subscription revenue, it's a recurring subscription fee that you get year in, year out, unless someone leaves. And the likelihood of getting that revenue from year 1 to year 2 to year 3 is much higher than if you have to rebuild revenue every year. There's a lot less risk attached to that revenue. So growth through subscription revenue has a much higher multiple than growth through media revenue, because in advertising, you'll do an advertising buy for 2015. Guess what? I'm starting 2016 in Investopedia essentially at 0. I have to restart it every single year. So theme number one in terms of growth strategies is to have an understanding that all growth is not equal, and that certain revenue dollars are worth far more than other revenue dollars. For example, revenue that is in a retail store is valued at less than revenue that comes online. It's just a fact. Okay? So that's number one. Number two, growth. There are oftentimes 2 ways to grow from a financial standpoint. One can grow through one's P&L, or one could grow through one's balance sheet. Okay, let me explain what that means. P&L means you are taking on all these expenses, and that your profit you were making $2 million in profit. You now invest $3 million for growth in expenses. You're now $1 million negative in profit. Okay? That's what P&L means. Balance sheet is I have X amount of dollars in cash. Okay? It doesn't affect your profit. It affects your cash. And I can now invest dollars in cash. Typically, when you do an M&A transaction, we acquire a company that's investing through your balance sheet versus P&L. You can't underestimate the impact of a P&L versus a balance sheet impact in how companies choose their growth strategies. Meaning, if a company can acquire another business and spend $20 million to acquire that business, and it doesn't negatively impact their profit, there is oftentimes a much greater likelihood that they're going to be interested in doing so than if they have to spend $3 million and all that impacts their profit. So the dynamics of how one chooses to grow, acquisition versus investment, have a big impact. Third is kind of risk assessment. There are just many companies that are willing to take on significant risk and dollar investment in order to grow much faster. And obviously there are others that are not, and that has to do with the culture of a company. Some company cultures, frankly, are much more risk averse, and some company cultures are more risk taking. And understanding that level of risk is really important in thinking about a company's growth. So now we'll talk about 4 different companies that I've been at. I was at either a senior vice president, president, or CEO level. So I was kind of on the executive team for all these companies, and we would have dozens and hundreds of hours of discussions and debates and strategy sessions all about the growth strategy for each of these companies. So you're going to get inside the boardroom here. You ready? Okay. 1-800-Flowers. So 1-800-Flowers, $1 billion in revenue, 10 to 12 different brands, as I mentioned, a cookie brand, a chocolate brand, a wine brand. When we did due diligence, I'd have to drink lots of wine for all the wine companies we'd acquired. That was like horrible. Harry and David, fruit brands, fruit bouquet brands, all that, the fruit bouquets, all those types of businesses. So in 1-800-Flowers, the growth strategy was really 4 levels. Number 1 was around getting people to purchase who were purchasers of one brand to purchase from another brand. Okay, that was the biggest thing. We had a term for it called enterprise customer value, which is fancy terms that people inside companies usually like to put on things. ECV. But if you can get someone who bought flowers, and they bought chocolate, like a chocolate heart, for Valentine's Day with their flowers, and get them to now buy chocolate at Fannie Mae or Harry London, which is the chocolate companies that were owned, and become a purchaser of chocolate for Fannie Mae and Harry London, huge home run. Because what it means is you can acquire customers very efficiently. You don't have to spend $50, $100, $200 on TV advertising to acquire a customer. You could do it through your network. If you get people from Harry and David who buy lots of fruit to now start buying fruit bouquets on 1-800-Baskets, which is another brand within the company. Again, huge value. So cross-pollination of customers was number 1 prioritization for 1-800-Flowers' growth. The second is around leveraging the database, which is very related. The company has 30 million names in the database who have ever purchased anything over the last 5 to 7 years across the portfolio of brands. Leveraging those names and mining those names. We had all these data scientists and experts in data that would say, this person, because of exactly what they purchased at that specific time, should get an email from this other brand at this time, because there's going to be a 5 times greater likelihood of opening it up because they bought something for someone's birthday that had to do with chocolate or cookies or whatever. So mining data. The third, again, related to this whole cross-brand thing, is a rewards program. And to be able to get someone and say to them, hey, if you buy from any of these 12 different brands, then you get fresh rewards points, is what it's called, because all 1-800-Flowers food or flowers is fresh. So fresh rewards. And you could then use those points for other brands. And that was a good way to get people to try brands that they had potentially never tried before. And then the fourth, and this was M&A. Again, for the reason that I stated earlier, acquiring a company does not negatively influence profit. If you negatively influence profit, you will be negatively influencing EPS, or earnings per share. If you negatively influence earnings per share, then you're going to be negatively impacting the potential valuation of a company, because many companies' valuations are based on a multiple to earnings per share, or a PE type ratio. So M&A never impacted that. M&A was positive towards that because you could acquire a company, acquire the revenue, acquire the profit. It would take cash down, but it was very, very positive. So that was some of the things that 1-800-Flowers focused on. In general, because when you do $1 billion in sales, you're not looking for like $500,000 here and like $300,000 there. You need like the big moves to really move the needle if you're going to try to grow 5, 10%, whatever a year. Okay. Next one, Everyday Health. Everyday Health was a great experience because I was at Everyday Health over the period where it went from private to going public. And the ability to, I'm going to talk more about this later, but the ability to go from a private to a public is a double-edged sword. It's positives and major negatives, and we'll get to that. But in terms of the growth strategy for Everyday Health, so number 1 is the key in media, to be a successful media company, is to have a lot of eyeballs, to have a lot of people watching, whether it's your TV channel or your radio program or going to your website. The bigger you are, it has kind of an exponential impact on the ability to then get advertising dollars. Everyday Health was a company has started up 10 years prior. And the question is, how is it going to get big fast? How does it drive all this additional inventory for ads on its site? Rather than trying to, and they built a number of sites, but it takes a while to actually grow sites, to make them faster, whether it's through SEO or other types of relationships. So what they said is, we have this amazing sales organization. We are going to go to all these other publishers who don't have as good and as interesting sales organizations, and we are going to guarantee them a certain amount of revenue, and we're going to sell all the ads on their sites for them. We're going to build a network of ads beyond just us. So they then got the Mayo Clinic, and they said to the Mayo Clinic, we're going to give you X amount of dollars, and we're going to sell all the ads in the Mayo Clinic. And if this is hypothetical, if you are making $10 million off the ads today, we're going to give you a guarantee of $15 million, and we're going to sell all the ads on your side. And we're going to go to What to Expect, the pregnancy site, what to expect when you're expecting. We're going to sell all the ads on your site. And they went to about 5 to 7 other digital publishers in order to get scale really quickly, to then be able to go to an advertiser and say, look at how much scale we have. We're bigger than WebMD. Or we're about the same size as WebMD. Give us the same size buy as WebMD. Before, they didn't have the ability to do that. But because they got so much scale by representing other firms through business development deals, that was a path, a significant path, frankly, towards their growth. The next path that Everyday Health realized in terms of growth was data. So they also, just like 1-800-Flowers, had a massive database of users, and they were able to work and find out which people had, psoriasis, which people had rheumatoid arthritis, which people had, God forbid, cancer, or any other types of conditions that individuals were in. And they wouldn't sell individual information because that's illegal, but they would be able to target advertisement by big pharma companies towards those people with those conditions and charge, frankly, a very lot because it was so super duper ultra target. You can't target TV advertising in that kind of way. This TV show is only going to be for people with psoriasis. How do you do that? But you could target ads for people with only with psoriasis. Last two, Everyday Health, Seeking Alpha. So Seeking Alpha has a large media business. Media means that they monetize the site through advertising. But when they started to realize the valuation of businesses are higher for subscription than for media, like I talked earlier about, the growth strategy for Seeking Alpha was, how do I build a subscription product on top of our free product? New York Times has advertising and a subscription product. Wall Street Journal has advertising and a subscription product. All these are advertising and also subscription products. How do I build a subscription product on top of that, and then be able to get the valuation multiple of a subscription business instead of the lower valuation multiple of a media business? Okay, and they're in the process of building out quite an interesting subscription business, and it could be really, really exciting, frankly, for the company. Investopedia. So, as I mentioned, we're all about educating the world about finance and investing. We have 20 million users. Our growth strategy is a couple of things. I'll tell you 3, and then we'll wrap up for questions. Number 1 is we have found a direct correlation. We're extremely data focused. We found a direct correlation between the type, creating content. Content leads to more traffic on our site. More traffic on our site leads to more revenue. It's very simple, right? The key is what type of content one creates. We have 2 PhD data scientists on our team. Data is a theme kind of throughout, that are literally former astrophysicists, that are literally, they're able to, that what they've done is they developed a couple of technologies that we only have that look at the differences between supply and demand of different types of content. Meaning, you want to write content about something that has a low supply and a high demand, and then we fill that need, right? So for example, if retiring in the Philippines has thousands of articles written about it, not that people are interested in looking at it, then don't write an article about it. But if retiring in Cambodia has tons of people looking for search on and looking at Google Trends, etc., on how to retire in Cambodia, and there's like 10 articles about it versus 10,000 articles on Philippines, go ahead and write like 30 articles about retiring in Cambodia. So we take this very, very scientific approach to our editorial and content strategy that enables us to know which types of articles will lead to significant traffic on our site, which is then monetized through advertising. So number one is when I started my job close to a year ago, we had 40,000 pieces of content in the 15 years that we created. I noticed this opportunity, and we created 20,000 pieces of content just this year. So in 1 year, we increased the total content by 50% for our business that it took like 15 years prior, because the ROI is there and it makes sense and we're doing it in a smart way. The second is video. I'm sure when I see my 14-year-old, he doesn't read anything on the web. All he does is watch videos. That's how he learns, that's how he reads, that's what he likes. So we are going from almost no video about a year and a half ago to we now have about 2,000 videos, and we're producing 200 videos on a monthly basis. And that's a big growth strategy for us. And then last is email newsletters. We have a couple million people signed up to, we have a ETF email newsletter, and a news you could use email newsletter, and a term of the day email newsletter. And we have, our goal is to increase the amount of traffic that we're getting through email from like 3% today to about 15%. Big growth, big focus, and that's it. So just to sum up, the 4 key themes are leveraging data for growth is really important. It's not about like sitting in a room and saying like, I think I have a great idea. An idea means nothing. An idea backed up with data, an idea backed up with a hypothesis where you think what's going to happen, you test out what's going to happen, and then you actually see what's going to happen. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. In the world of digital, you can have an answer in like a day. When people don't take the tests and don't test things out, that's how they oftentimes fail. So data, all growth is not equal, benefits of M&A versus investing in the company, and then risk tolerance.